If Donald Trump is reelected, there is going to be a fascist purge of the federal government. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I was watching MSNBC over the weekend, and I was watching Michael Steele and his co-host, I'm sorry, I forget her name, but they were interviewing somebody from the Heritage Foundation. And this guy was talking about Trump's plans for a second term and what they're going to do with the executive branch of the federal government. And this is all stemming from this Project 2025. And I want to get into this a little bit, but before I do, we need to understand something about Donald Trump. He doesn't actually have any plans to do anything. He is running primarily, almost exclusively, to stay out of prison. He doesn't actually give a damn about governing, okay? So the governing is going to be left to all these people he surrounds himself with. And it is they who you really need to pay attention to. People like this guy from the Heritage Foundation. Because it's going to be people like him who are really making the decisions. Because Donald Trump couldn't be bothered. He does not care. If he gets reelected, he is going to be ecstatic just to not be in prison. All right? He's going to be spending his time doing what he does now. Playing golf, going places to have his ass kissed, and that's about it. He's not going to be spending any time actually doing the business of being president. He's going to be leaving that to others. So we really need to be paying attention to people like this Heritage guy. Now, when I said that there's going to be a purge of the federal government, what exactly does that mean? Well, this guy on Heritage, and I will try to find the clip and link it in the video description below so you can know what I'm talking about. But what this guy is talking about is an ideological purge of civil servants in the federal government, career employees who work in these various executive branch departments. We're not talking about political appointees here. We are talking about your everyday Americans who work for the federal government. He is talking very clearly about firing those people unless they pass an ideological purity test. Unless they swear allegiance, basically, to Donald Trump and his fascist movement, they will be fired. And they will be replaced with people who will be personally loyal to Donald Trump. That is the kind of fascist purge they're talking about. And they're really not even sugarcoating it very much. They're telling us exactly what they plan to do. And people need to pay attention because let me tell you, the media sure as hell isn't doing their job. Now, I applaud Michael Steele and I really wish I could remember her name for doing this interview. But, you know, by and large, this issue is not being covered. This Project 2025 is not being covered by the mainstream media. People don't know what's going on, what they have planned for a second Trump term. But this is what they're talking about. And again, this is not Trump. Trump doesn't care. But he is going to put in place all of these people who really, truly are, to their core, fascist authoritarians. Now, Trump is an authoritarian, and he clearly has fascist tendencies. And to the extent that he participates in governance at all, he will govern as an authoritarian. Absolutely no doubt about it. The big problem with Donald Trump is that if he is reelected, he's never going to leave. But that for another video. But as I say, the day-to-day governance of the executive branch is going to be controlled by Donald Trump's true believer authoritarian fascists that he surrounds himself with. People like this Heritage guy, people like Stephen Miller, all of these people, Steve Bannon, these guys are going to be running the executive branch. Now, you will not hear everybody be as open as this Heritage guy was. And they won't be as honest. What they'll say is, oh, well, we're just talking about, we're conservatives and we just want to shrink the size of government. We think the executive branch is too big. Don't fall for that. That's bullshit. Now, I agree that the executive branch is too big. I believe that we should shrink the size of government. The federal government does things it has no business doing. And we definitely have a bloated bureaucracy. But responsibly reining in the size and scope of the federal government, to bring it within the parameters of the Constitution and to make it lean and mean and to do its job in the most cost-efficient manner possible, is not what these people are talking about. They are not talking about responsibly paring down government and having an effective, efficient, constitutional federal government. That's not what they're talking about. So don't fall for it if that's what they try to sell you. What they want to do is a fascist ideological purge. These are not small government conservatives, traditional conservatives of old. These are actually big government authoritarian fascists. They have no problem with big government. I promise you. They have absolutely no problem with a big government. They just want that big government to be controlled by Trump loyalists. Believe me, they will not be shrinking the size and scope of government. They simply will be replacing civil servants who may not be personally loyal to Donald Trump with people who are. That's what they're going for. And then they will use the power of government to oppress you and me. That's where the authoritarian comes in. And that's why they are not opposed to big government. It's not easy to oppress a population with a small, limited constitutional government as the framers of the Constitution envisioned. So that's not what they're going for. They want a strong, authoritarian central government that they control with a bunch of people who are personally loyal to the dear leader. That's exactly what they're doing. And then, as I mentioned, Donald Trump is never going to leave if he is reelected. He will not stand for reelection again unless the election is completely rigged, which may be what they do. But he is never going to leave office if he is reelected. Mark my words. But we'll talk much more about that if, God forbid, he were to win. And we'll talk about it before then. But just understand what's going on here. When they're talking about limiting the size and scope of the federal government, they're not talking about limiting its size or its scope. What they're talking about is firing people en masse who they may not be able to control. No, that's not it. They are going to fire people en masse who are not personally loyal to Donald Trump and who will use their positions in the federal government to enact his personal agenda and their personal agenda. Because remember, Donald Trump really doesn't care all that much about policy and all of that stuff. He's going to be spending his time golfing. These people, they want a federal government full of Trump loyalists who will be taking their marching orders from Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller and Mike Flynn and all these freaking lunatics who are really going to be controlling the executive branch of the federal government. That is what they want. That is what they will do if Donald Trump is reelected. And let me tell you this. As bad as you think a second Trump term will be, I guarantee you it will be worse. It will be much worse. And they will do things that we are not even right now imagining that they will do. As much as we can envision, as corrupt and authoritarian as we can envision a second Trump term, I promise you it will be worse than that. So, and that's what it is. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll talk to you again soon.